Talk today is going to be on differentiation strategies. My name is Beth Hoffman, and we are going to learn together how to grow our gifted learners. So, the purpose of this presentation is to identify why we are incorporating differentiation strategies, how to help our gifted learners. We're going to learn 10 differentiation strategies and how to incorporate them, and then 5 resources that you teachers can use. So, the reason why we are incorporating differentiation strategies into our teaching is that gifted students need compacting and differentiation. Learning is a forward progress from wherever the students enter into our classroom at the beginning of the school year and where they need to end at the end of the school year. Our goal is to try to grow them a whole year. And so obviously, our gifted learners come into the classroom already knowing a lot of the content. And so we need to make sure they're still learning a year's worth of knowledge as well. So there are 10 different strategies that I mentioned already that we're going to travel along this road together to learn to incorporate into our classrooms. Many of these strategies include students working on their own. And so there are some essential rules for independent work that we learned in our course that I want to share with you to help students know their expectations when they're doing independent work. So the first strategy is compacting one lesson at a time, which is the most difficult first. This is used for compacting and differentiating schoolwork. The teacher determines which items represent the most difficult section of the entire task, and these might be sequentially at the end of the assignment or various sections. 5 examples are a reasonable number of questions to have students do. When the assignment is posted, we want to make note of what the most difficult first problems are. As a teacher, we would explain to the class and say something like, some of you have already learned this material before and maybe don't need much practice. So if you can complete the most difficult problems first correctly in a way that can be clearly read and understood without getting more than one wrong, then you will be done practicing. So as a teacher, we would first check whatever student gets 4 or 5 right. And then if that student wants, they would become the checker for the rest of the period. Students will work on any activity in the same subject for the remainder of class, obviously following those essential rules that we just discussed. So I have an example of something that might be written on a class board for the assignment for the whole class, and obviously the students that chose the most difficult first problems. The second strategy is compacting 1 week at a time, pre-test for volunteers. This is for compacting and differentiating skill work. The assessment should be available for volunteers to take at the beginning. This is the same assessment that they would take at the end of the week. Students would be given time at the beginning of class to take a few minutes to look over the content. Teachers are not supposed to do a review. And then the teachers would invite students who want to demonstrate they know the knowledge possibly to take the pretest. Students need to know that the grade would only count in the gradebook if they can represent mastery. So hopefully that would help them not be worried about trying it if they felt they knew it. The reason for the pretest is to find out how much they know about the content so the teacher can decide if compacting is correct for them. The acceptable score for mastery is 90% or higher. So if a student is taking the pretest and realizes they don't really know enough information, they can stop and return to the whole class activity. And then students who score mastery on the pretest will either work on extension activities or a choice extension activity that they got teacher approval for. And I just gave an example here of a pretest that might be seen. So the third type of compacting is compacting 1 unit at a time, the learning contract. This is used for compacting and differentiating schoolwork as well. At the beginning, students should be introduced to what the learning contract is and and then they can decide for themselves if they want to take the pre-test opportunity. Students would be given a few minutes to look at the beginning unit or what the upcoming content was, very much like the previous compacting, and then invite volunteers to take the pre-test. The cutoff score this time is 80%. This strategy does not require students to demonstrate mastery of all the content like the previous one. Students on a contract will receive instruction when the standards being taught are the ones that they did not know on the pretest. And then contracts would be prepared for students who meet the required score. An informal meeting would be held for those students who score above the 80% for them to, and then they could decide if they want to do the contract or not. And then we would also, as teachers, offer that most difficult first daily, because if a student that is on a learning contract is sitting in the whole class instruction because it was a standard they did not know, then they may not need to do all 15 questions on that assignment. So they could still be offered for that day the most difficult first in case they did not need that many to show mastery. In fact, the whole class, there would be other students that maybe did not take the pretest that maybe could do the most difficult daily at certain lessons during the unit. And there's an example of the learning contract for you to study and use if you wish. The study guide method is the fourth one, and that is used for compacting and differentiating new content. It reduces the amount of time spent on grade level standards. At the start of the unit, students can follow a prepared study guide. Students can only be excused from regular work if they have mastered the required standards and they learn them in a shorter time than their peers. So it's definitely faster pacing, and students have that choice with extension work, which obviously makes the gifted students happy. Keep in mind, with this method, students do not have to turn in all of the homework. Mastery is shown on assessments without doing all the daily work. And I just have an example study guide there that perhaps students would be given in a geometry unit to follow in this type of differentiation. The fifth one is the curriculum differentiation chart. It's a way to plan for all learning modalities at the same time. So that would be planning for auditory analytic, visual global, tactile kinesthetic. The descriptions of the various learning tasks for each modality are given. The standards are in the left column, and then the tasks are horizontal, and the extension activities are also included as at the very end. The start of each unit should be with an overview of the content, and then students get to choose which type of task they want to complete. So here's an example of a curriculum differentiation chart. Students would be given several days to work on this chart, and then there would be a discussion about what the students have learned. The sixth is tiered learning experiences, and it's a way to differentiate for all students simultaneously. Teachers would use the tiered lesson planning chart that has the entry, advanced, and extension levels. The required standard is in that left column again. The advanced level should not be more work than other columns. Instead, it definitely wants to focus on those higher level of taxonomy that analyze, evaluate, and create. And I have an example of that tiered lesson plan chart here. Then the seventh is the Think Tricks model. It's a model of creating differentiated learning tasks. The thinking taxonomy consists of the 7 basic types of mind actions, from simplest to most complex. It is represented with icons, as you'll see in the example next. So it has recall, similarity, difference, cause and effect, idea to example, then example to idea, and evaluation. It does go from least complex to most complex, so it does start from top to bottom in just the way that the sample gave to us in the textbook. What's nice about this is there are the icons, which help our visual learners, And then there's the shared metacognition between teachers and students, that they know and understand how they know something. Students work cooperatively, and this can be done orally or in writing or in a combination. Gifted students appreciate the independence and ownership that working in this type of grid allows them. And I have an example of a ThinkTricks grid that I created over Pythagorean theorem and its converse. Learning centers, what's nice about learning centers is the work we did for a curriculum differentiation chart can be transferred to color-coded task cards. It's nice if these task cards are arranged by standard. And learning centers, it's helpful to have interesting and inviting displays to make enticing questions. We want the activities and resources to appeal to the various learning modalities. We want the product choices chart to be there, descriptions of the rubrics, answer keys for kids, instructions on where to store their work, guidelines for their behavior. Examples of completed tasks are nice, especially if it's the first time they've done a learning center, and guidelines for their behavior, tips where to go for help if they need help as they're working. And I just have an example here of some task cards for a geometry unit. The 9th is the personal interest study project, and that's an independent study that is curriculum related and based on student interest. We want to allow time for students working on their personal interest projects to share. Teachers should spend time with these learners as a group so that they know that we are interested in their projects and value the time they're spending. If a student can't think of a topic, then the teachers can give them a personal interest survey to help them identify an interest. And the topics do not have to be related to a prescribed curriculum. Students can be very creative with their ideas and product choices in this strategy. And I included an example of the interest survey that was shared in our textbook to help give students ideas on some of their interests. And the 10th one is cluster grouping. Cluster grouping is grouping gifted and talented students and placing them together in a mixed ability classroom. Resources suggest that we would want 3 to 8 students for a cluster. Our textbook author does suggest that if 10 or more students are in a grade level, then an additional gifted cluster may have to be designated. The remainder of the students should not be difficult or demanding. Teachers need to have specialized training and be motivated to work with gifted students. The curriculum definitely has to be differentiated because gifted students have varying levels of achievement, interest, and experiences. So therefore, the need for acceleration or extension is going to vary depending on the content. Teachers should foster valuing and acceptance of differences within the classroom. And teachers should design independent studies that utilize student passion and interest. And what's great about cluster grouping is it works at all grade levels and all subject areas. So I just have an example here of a suggested possible cluster grouping. You can see that only part of the class, obviously it has that 3 to 8 there, is going to be in a cluster, whether they are gifted or high achieving students, it would be within that range. And then lastly, our differentiation strategy resources. The first 3 that I have found are websites, and then the last 2 are articles. And I have the references there as well as at the end here to share with you so that you can dig into these a little bit deeper. So the first is Autodesk Instructables, and this website just has an abundance of extension activities, including the tabs that I have listed. The purpose of this is to provide teachers with a resource that contains extension activities for them, which are very useful for independent study. The resources focus on STEM projects and innovations. And I found value in this resource because I thought it would be very beneficial for my building, because Ridgeview STEM Junior High, where I teach, we just got our STEM accreditation renewed last school year. And so as teachers there, we're constantly looking for ideas on how to incorporate STEM into our classrooms so that we can continue that accreditation. The second is NCTM resources. And this site, National Council of Teacher of Mathematics, has an abundance of math materials to challenge and extend students in math, grades pre-K through 12. Lots of icons that were listed there as apps, all of those 7 there, and I think there was another 2, from anything from resources to problems of the day to lessons, to rigor and coherence activities, to explorations that students can actually do at home or at school. So it's just a great resource with a plethora of resources for teachers and students to be able to use immediately in their classroom and incorporate. And so obviously it has a lot of extension and enrichment activities ready to go for math teachers. And I personally found value in this because as the math department head for my building, I just felt that I wanted to find a really good resource for to be able to share with the math teachers. I just think it's really easy being in math to kind of get in the pattern of following the textbook and just assigning what's in the textbook daily. And teachers really just need something at their fingertips that they can use to be able to, challenge their gifted learners quickly, especially if they haven't received all this training. The TED Ed is a website that contains hundreds of TED animations and TED Talks, which definitely hopefully spark interest and curiosity in our students, as well as video-based lessons by subject area. So I thought this was a great resource to be able to inspire students to be innovative for all of teachers and all of our content areas at our school. And again, since our school is a STEM school, very valuable for us to spark creativity in our students. I also thought it would be great for students, for us teachers to put on their choice boards or to allow them to research some in their enrichment activities, because I think these videos can be, very powerful. And then the last 2 are articles. The first, the Davidson Institute article, Gifted Lesson Plans, a list of resources. This had 55 educator books and websites. All of them had, so another 55 links were on this one article, with lessons in alphabetical order. It had something for all teachers, no matter what subject. I chose a couple that were math ones that I thought were very interesting, but again, every subject area was included in this, which again, in a professional development like this, definitely want to provide resources for all content areas. So purpose, it has resources for all content areas. And again, we want those resources to be ready to use right away. And I thought this was really valuable since they had science and social studies and elective resources as well, because I know the gifted students in my building, the language arts, and obviously I'm the math teacher in my building, both of us are going through this gifted certification. But these same 125 gifted students have a science teacher, a social studies teacher, and elective teachers that aren't going through this training. And so providing them resources to help them know how to extend those gifted students' learning is important. And then lastly, the Davidson article on differentiating curriculum for gifted students. This kind of talks about the needs for modification of content, process, environment, and product. Obviously, in this course, we learned about those 4 different ways of how to differentiate for our students. But the teachers in our building who haven't gone through this training, they do not know that there's that many different ways that you can modify curriculum for them. And so this article I thought was very powerful in kind of summarizing those 4 different ways to differentiate our curriculum. So that was the purpose, was to help show them in a very efficient way of how to do that. And then obviously the value is for the teachers in our building that have not received the gifted training, how to help them learn how to differentiate for those learners. So I have included the references there for you to continue learning more on your own if you wish. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. And I am happy to help you continue on the road to helping grow our gifted learners. Thank you.